featured reader. So, it took a while, but Kimberly Reyes finally gave up her dream of playing for the New York Jets and began her transition to creative writing after receiving her MA from Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism in 2013. She's since been a postgraduate journalism fellow at the Poetry Foundation in 2013, a Callaloo fellow in 2014, a Watering Hole fellow in 2015, and a William Dickey fellow and MFA candidate in poetry at San Francisco State University. Her nonfiction has appeared in the Associated Press, Entertainment Weekly, Time.com, The New York Post, The Village Voice, Alternative Press, ESPN the Magazine, Jane, Honey, New York One News, and the Best American Poetry blog. Extensive list, oh boy. Her poetry has appeared on the Feminist Wire, the Acentos Review, and in Belleville Park Pages. Everyone, please welcome Kimberly.
Okay, so the first piece I'm going to read is actually a vignette, creative nonfiction, and this is terrifying because I've only read poetry to a captive audience. But here we go. It's called The Ride Back Home. I prayed the thin white wires hanging from my ears would serve as a sign, a signal saying, better to ask someone else for directions or for the time, my time. As a native New Yorker, I'd learned at a very early age how to erect invisible boundaries. Besides, I was studying the Eiffel Tower through a scratch metro window. With the Seine in clear view, a warm marmalade light entered the car as the train surfaced from below. This was the first time I'd spotted the calm river and its flanking towers since arriving in Paris. Although this wasn't my first time visiting the city, my heart raced just as it had exactly 10 years earlier. The Parisian riders seemed coolly unaffected, the way I was when the D or N train rattled over the Brooklyn Bridge, howling at our pointy and sparkling brown and silver city. I smiled and nodded to this territorial ambivalence as the train doors opened and closed, and I collapsed into the chili peppers throbbing through my earphones. Taking in my surroundings was always easier this way, with bass and separation. Plus, I was about to move to California when I got back to the States, so it was fun to fantasize about Anthony Kiedis and what we might be doing together in Paris if I was his dad in California. He was so creative, excitable, unstable, conflicted, scarred, addicted, recovering, and more than likely emotionally detached. Sweet imperfection. Just like my last love in Paris a decade ago. The train filled at the next stop, Trocadero, where we found that addicting orange-filled macaroon cafe years ago. My nostrils flared and I flashed back to the citrusy zest as I dropped my head against the window. I didn't wonder if he was happier now as much as I wondered what that meant. Ready to disappear into melancholy and the anonymity of the crowd, I felt two sets of eyes on me. A couple, brunette, in their 20s, carrying a large bag that read Paris in a serif font, mimicking the design of the Eiffel Tower. He was holding the center car pole, and she was grasping onto him for balance. Both studied me, wide-eyed, not communicating to each other or to me why they were staring, but eerily fixated. This would have driven me nuts back home, and I would have returned a squinted, slow, and deliberate gaze to show my annoyance. But this wasn't a New York City subway stare. This was non-threatening and innocent, friendly. Even before our wide eyes met and they simultaneously cracked half grins, they were happy to see me, giddy almost. Their excitement and concentration were so palpable that I almost smiled back, but my reflex to turn away kicked in first. Their four brown eyes were so glued to my movement that the mouths below them automatically started to mirror my grimace. What was it about me that caught their eyes? They were obviously American, with their eagerness, blue jeans, Chuck Taylors, and tourist tote full of travel bounty. But what made me stand out as familiar and amiable to them on this busy train? This wasn't Tokyo or Melbourne, where my copious melanin and head of exploding curls always gave away my alien status. There were people of every shade and design on this train, so it had to be more than that. Was it the way I was dressed? A black peplum collared raincoat, black leggings, and black ballet flats? Doubtful. This was Parisian camouflage. It pained me to consider, but I wondered if they recognized in me the fresh-faced naivete I detected in them. Or maybe the distinct American tension that comes from the compulsion for companionship, mixed with a juvenile need to be exceptional, to stand apart. I'd come to Paris to embark on a vision quest of sorts, alone. I wasn't committed to staying that way and hoped to meet like-minded people, but maybe even give the love thing an honest try again. But I was proud to walk the streets without the armor of constant company. At least I thought I was. Had they seen through my ruse, sensed my insecurity, felt the terror they'd awoken, or worse, the long-dead hope? As the train stopped, they moved toward two matted cloth seats, unbalanced, clinging onto each other for dear life. I felt exposed, fraudulent, and immediately grateful the two open seats faced opposite mine. Poetry. So this first one is called The Dance. I met my messenger in a third grade classroom. Her name was Jennifer, with one N. No belaboring, repetition, no time. She had advanced leukemia, the childhood one, whatever that means. And he held my hand as our parents whispered the C word, her older brother, Chris. I didn't know any teenage boys who weren't my cousins, and he didn't look like any of them. He flashed like Saturday morning cartoons, and my heart beat quick, bushy vibrations on their parents' brown velvet couch. Beside him, my tongue hung heavy and loose inside a mouth I kept trying to shut, and my moist and shifty palms collapsed as he slid 3 fingers into the heat of one. I remember embarrassment. Did he mean to do that? Did I look like a girl, there, on the couch? All of my friends were boys, and we never talked about it. I remember fear, not for the reaper in the room, the one we all saw, but for the fates that awakened then, in my sweat, dancing over. I remember Jennifer's big, grainy eyes wilting under her thinning blonde hair, on me. I wonder if she knew what started on that couch, in that orange living room. If she knew who I'd morph into when my palms got slick, who I'd remain for all her lost seasons to come. Those eyes, the measured heat, as if telling me on her way out, in her transfixed calm, the setting sun is always warmer than its rising, whispering to wait, in line, behind the blithe lilies. It'd be a while before I could hold a hand and look up. I was going to be the last flower to bloom. So this next one is, so Sandra Bland would have been 27 years old this month, actually. And I hesitate to say it's a Sandra Bland poem, because this is really about any of us who could have been her, but it's obviously inspired by that story. It's called In a Blink. Strange to make bedfellows of trash in a plastic noose. After storming the tower, flag up. Ink still wet on her ivory lease, crossing hiccuping lines, writhing white paint over black heat. But nobody crosses Texas without a signal, a field finger. We all needed one more morning to straighten our hair, iron out the sass, the steam. Forgot the world would judge our selfies. Foreboding snapshots of mangled, coiled history. Warning. My girl, the dream, this nightmare, is now yours. The packing in the middle of the night, the cutting, the running, the missed signals. How could you forget the signal? They can stop you at any minute. Stop, and we're over, all over again, rotting from the root. Okay, so this one is also inspired by current events of a different sort. I wasn't in the country when David Bowie passed away, but he was my hero. So the only way I knew how to make sense of it was to write a poem. This is called Breaking Glass. It was the punch that saved all our lives, the awoken eye, that ensured our Messiah would know his role every time he caught the glass, forced to confront his destiny and reflect it back to his leper disciples. Like his permanently expanded pupil, he'd open and ask more of us. We could all be sculpted blonde men, burrowing in Brixton comfort and obscurity, dying with the music still pumping, compressing our kaleidoscope. Or we could aim for the top of the pops and force fluidity into constricted pearls and painfully chiseled white china. We could all dare to be naked and beautiful, contrived and true. We could all pull down a star and in sureness burn out. one more, actually read this in class earlier, so you've heard it, a few of you. It's called Blood in the Soil. I found her name online, tracing the crimson-veined roots attached to the invisible hands that have kneaded my spine, pressing me to places no one I followed had seen before. I found Lenison, my great-great, on glowing pixelated brown papers, her papers, our birth certification that she was born before the war. We certainly didn't win. And though the website wouldn't name it, we know she was born belonging to someone whose name doesn't matter, just that he took and gave her hers, forced red South Carolina quicksand clay under her feet, her chattel nails. No lift in that lifetime, but she planted roots and quietly crept far enough above the trees to name her babies babies, to force their leaves. I mime her name, Lenison, with every rise. Mine is hers. I belong to her choreography, her suffocating lies. Her leaping over lives like my mother's, who belonged since she was 13. Prom queen, teen dream that birthed a promise, in exchange for not having to hold the eyes, seeing with her own what they did to her mother, my grandmother, how they burned in her skull, fastening from new man to new child to new man, fanning the flame to get a share, cropped her roots, her 6-foot frame. Because not belonging in a world that won't claim you, or how your mother's mother only knew belonging is the main. Guideless steps become bloodthirst, a hunger game. But Lenison only sees what looks like sky, so the bodiless hands, the third eyes, drop me in half stride, in races they could only dream of winning. Lenison wants the trophies, without considering the wear of the track, the familial crack of the whip at my side. It's time to build stone homes we can live in, a tall roof. Unhinged, I co-sign to secure a plot in this lifetime, fireproof. But we're tired, we wilt, I've run out of sight and bend. For girls without proper provenance, our mothers are the homeland. Thank you.